Jim Nabors stunned the world in 2013. He married his 38-year partner at the age of 82. His existence was unknown to his fans. They avoided paying $4.08 million in taxes because of the wedding, but it also reopened old wounds. Jim's partner is finally telling their tale 7 years after Jim passed away. The actual cause of their 40-year concealment, the Hollywood controversy that ruined Jim's friendship with Rock Hudson, and the life-altering liver transplant. You will never see Gomer Pyle the same way again once Dan tells you about their secret existence. Jim Nabors was born in Sylacauga, Alabama, a small hamlet, on June 12, 1930. There were only 8,000 or so residents at the time. His grandma lived with his family in a modest 3-room home. Life was difficult during the midst of the Great Depression. In Alabama, over 25% of people were unemployed, and many families were barely making ends meet. The household next door was no exception. It was a daily challenge for them to eat enough. Jim learned to remain strong and humble from growing up in that world, lessons that he carried with him throughout his life. Jim suffered from severe asthma in addition to poverty. Treatments for asthma were different in the 1930s and 1940s than they are today. He would frequently be confined to bed, having trouble breathing. For a boy growing up in the South, it was difficult because sports were out of the question. But Jim resorted to music rather than succumbing to his loneliness. Singing became his passion after he began doing it as a way to kill time. The asthma that seemed to be a curse ultimately led him along the route that would bring him fame. Mavis, his mother, put in a lot of overtime serving tables at a truck stop in exchange for any tip she could obtain. Fred, his father, accepted any job he could get. Fred eventually rose to the position of police officer in the municipality. Although it didn't pay well, the job provided some stability. They raised chickens in the yard for meat and eggs to help put food on the table. The family survived because to their ingenuity and hard work. Jim also learned early on the importance of working for every little amount. Jim revealed his latent talent in high school. He sang in the church choir and joined the Glee Club. The quiet, asthmatic boy's large, powerful voice was unexpected. However, everyone was taken aback when Jim sang. The teachers and choir directors allowed him solos because of the strength of his baritone. His voice became the focal point of neighborhood gatherings, and it gave him a newfound sense of self-assurance that would serve him well in life. Jim studied commerce at the University of Alabama after graduating from high school. He was attempting to take the cautious route, but something changed while he was at college. He made his acting debut when he joined the Delta Tau Delta fraternity. People took attention when he appeared in their performances and acts. Jim had a natural sense of humor and comfortable on stage. Despite his concentration on business classes, he couldn't help but be lured to performing. His college experience demonstrated that he was more than just intelligent. He was charming and talented. Jim needed a job when he finished school. He relocated to New York City and started working at the UN as a typist. The stage was a long way off. He felt isolated and far from home as he put his reports in a large, chilly office. The air pollution in the metropolis exacerbated his asthma. His dream was to work in the entertainment industry. He was merely trying to make ends meet for the time being, though. He had to depart New York due to his health. Jim took a position at WRGP-TV, a local television station, after relocating to Chattanooga, Tennessee. He was a film cutter who edited together advertisements and news segments. It wasn't glitzy. However, it gave him insight into the inner workings of television. He would imagine that the chairs were an audience as he rehearsed his routines in the deserted studio late at night. Due to his asthma, he moved west in the late 1950s. He moved to Los Angeles after packing things. He spent the day there working for NBC as a film cutter. He played in little clubs at night. He lived off peanut butter sandwiches and hardly slept. However, he persisted because he believed that if he put in enough effort, someone would take notice. Jim developed the performance that would transform his life at a little Santa Monica nightclub called The Horn. He portrayed an awkward, bashful, rural guy who would fumble onto the stage before shocking everyone with a powerful operatic voice. The combination of comedy and amazing singing was adored by the audience. Because of how well-liked his presentations were, producers began to visit to see what all the excitement was about. Comedian Bill Dana saw Jim perform one evening in 1962. Bill got Jim a slot on the Steve Allen program because he was so impressed. After performing his hillbilly routine, Jim's voice astounded the audience. The response was enormous. Jim started receiving calls from producers and agencies all of a sudden. Finally, after years of hardship, his time has arrived. Andy Griffith visited the club one evening. He was astounded by the performances of his neighbors. He made him an offer to appear on the Andy Griffith program once. Gomer Pyle, a charming but dim gas station worker, would be portrayed by Nabors. Everything altered with what should have been a single appearance. Everyone was won over by the Nabors' charm. The producers were immediately aware that they had discovered something unique. The Nabors' lives were irrevocably altered by their chance encounter in a small club. American comedy was likewise altered by it. When Gomer Pyle made his television debut in 1962, he immediately became a sensation. His catchphrases, "Shay as I am and Jaylee," gained popularity almost immediately. These statements were memorable because of his wide-eyed expression and deep Southern drawl. Children began uttering the word Jaylee on playgrounds. Adults used it in the workplace. Politicians were powerless to stop it. These amusing expressions become widely used. They appeared in cartoon strips. They appeared in advertisements. They even influenced clothes and toys. The words were innocent and enjoyable. They made no overt references to God or magic, which was crucial for television at the time. People were moved by Gomer's uncomplicated joy at a time when the nation was rapidly changing. His remarks were filled with amazement and a sense of safety. Gomer's character gained so much popularity that CBS was left with no other option. Gomer was recruited as a regular on the Andy Griffith Show within months after his debut. Hundreds of letters were written by fans requesting more Gomer. People admired his good nature, his sense of humor, and the way he counterbalanced Andy's somber sheriff persona. Gomer's stories quickly rose to the top of the show's popularity. He even began to deprive other characters of their attention. It was uncommon for Nabors to go from being a guest star to a regular. It demonstrated how much Gomer's goodness and comedy resonated with people. Gomer's achievements continued after that. In 1964, CBS took a risk. They handed him Gomer Pyle, USMC, his own show. That was uncommon in those days. Well, the risk paid off, even though spin-offs were uncommon and few supporting characters ever had their own series. Gomer Pyle, USMC was an immediate hit when it debuted on September 25, 1964. The hot-tempered Sergeant Carter, played by Frank Sutton, and the innocent Lovely Gomer, played by Jim Nabors, won over many hearts. Every week, fans laughed at the combination of Gomer's generosity and Carter's unrelenting annoyance. When Gomer got his own series, he had only made 23 appearances on the Andy Griffith Show. That demonstrated how well-liked he was. There were 5 seasons of the show. Fans were given 150 episodes of full PG. In Nielsen ratings, it never fell below 10th place. At its conclusion, it was America's second most watched program, directly behind Martin's and Rowan's Laugh-In. It was the synergy between Sutton and the Nabors that created the magic. Every moment was entertaining to watch because of Carter's loud rage and Gomer's naive charm. Aaron Rubin and Sheldon Leonard realized they had something unique behind the camera. Inside a Marine base, they captured the essence of small-town America while filming in California. People continue to purchase the DVD and watch the reruns now. Jim Nabors appeared in nearly all of the scenes. At the time, that was uncommon. Across the nation, his persona came to represent benevolence and generosity. The show's total avoidance of discussing the Vietnam War was one unexpected aspect. America was embroiled in that horrific battle from 1964 to 1969. However, Gomer Pyle never brought it up. CBS and the producers sought to provide a respite from the stress and sorrow of everyday life. They aimed to make the show feel like soul-satisfying comfort food. They so concentrated on Gomer's kindness, Carter's yelling, and amusing mix-ups. It was successful. For the most of its existence, the show remained in the top 3. In order to escape the terrible realities of the times, families all around America tuned in. However, most spectators were unaware of the suffering that Jim Nabors endured behind the jokes and grins. He had to conceal his sexual orientation. Being gay could ruin a career in the 1960s. Numerous staff members and co-stars were aware, and some of them mistreated him as a result. They joked cruelly. They did not include him. They behaved as though he wasn't welcome. The Nabors had to keep quiet, fearful that he would lose everything if he spoke up. Ooh. Imagine pretending to be happy for millions of people while harboring that worry on a daily basis. Ron Howard and others acknowledged years later that they witnessed what their neighbors endured. They observed the cruel remarks and the aloof demeanor. They witnessed how he wasn't treated with the same respect as the performers who were straight. The Nabors continued to be kind and professional. Although it was silent, his strength was present. His narrative brought to light the difficulties faced by gay actors during the supposedly heyday of Hollywood. It also demonstrated the bravery required to persevere. Nabors put in more effort than most celebrities on top of all of that. His days were 12 hours long. He frequently got started before the sun rose. He had to commit up to 15 pages of conversation to memory each night. He didn't have time to relax or simply be himself. On weekends and vacations, he played in concerts and nightclubs. Perhaps to avoid the worry and anxiety that followed him, he made an effort to stay occupied. Even when he was at the top of his game, he was concerned that everything might end if the truth was revealed. No one anticipated Jim Nabors' 1965 debut in the music industry. He was well known as Gomer Pyle already, the silly, good-natured figure who made everybody chuckle. However, he shocked fans by revealing a side of himself after signing with Columbia Records. Gomer's high-pitched drawl was nothing like his deep, operatic baritone voice. He recorded around 30 albums in the ensuing 10 years. He sung pop, gospel, and country songs, but the majority were romantic ballads. Making a lot of albums wasn't the only factor in his success. On the Billboard Hot 200 chart, 12 of them were featured. Additionally, 3 of his albums achieved gold status between 1968 and 1974. On the Billboard list, his 1966 album Jim Nabors Sings Love Me With All Your Heart even peaked at number 34. His rendition of The Impossible Dream unexpectedly proved popular in Australia in 1968, making it into the top 30. It was unbelievable to fans who knew him only as Gomer. Unexpectedly, he gained respect for his songs and voice. Meanwhile, Nabors developed a relationship with Carol Burnett that went down in television history. Nabors made an appearance as a special guest on the inaugural edition of The Carol Burnett Show in 1967. It wasn't an isolated incident. He was the main guest at every season premiere for the following 11 years, till the end of the show in 1978. The public agreed when she referred to him as her lucky charm. People looked forward to Burnett's visits because they always offered heart, humor, and memorable music, and it was impossible to miss their camaraderie and chemistry when they shared the stage. Nabors found time for the concert despite his hectic schedule. His participation was interpreted by fans as a sign that the season was off to a fantastic start. In his own variety shows, his neighbors likewise stole the show. The Jim Nabors Hour, which ran from 1969 to 1971, combined comedy, music, and people he had worked with before. In 1969 and 1974, he also starred in television specials. His dancing was a different story, but his singing was always excellent. His neighbors were the first to acknowledge that he lacked rhythm, and he frequently ridiculed himself for it. He attempted an audacious dancing routine during a live performance and ended up tearing his pants on stage. Rather than feeling ashamed, he joined the others in laughing. His willingness to make fun of himself and convert a misstep into a highlight was evident in the moment, which became part of his charm. Nabors established what would become to be one of the most cherished customs in American athletics in 1972. At the Indianapolis 500 in Indiana, he sang the song Back Home Again. It was so well received by fans that he continued to return. In total, he performed the song 34 times, lived between 1972 and 2014. Tens of thousands of spectators were singing along with him as his deep, powerful voice filled the raceway. He was supported by the Purdue Marching Band, and I always got chills from the moment. A video of his performance was shown prior to the race, even though his health prevented him from attending in person. The occasion was filled with heartfelt farewells and tributes as he performed it for the final time in 2014. Fans viewed him as one of their own, and Nabors had become an integral part of the race's identity. In the late 1970s, Nabors did not try to follow the latest musical fads. Rather, he moved to Randwood Records, a label that emphasized classic music and easy listening. While disco and rock were becoming popular, Nabors continued to do what he did best. Because of his recognizable voice and poignant songs, his devoted followers continued purchasing his recordings. Nabors found a home where his music could continue to flourish thanks to Randwood, which was formed by Randy Wood and Lawrence Welk. Hollywood was a dangerous place for actors who didn't fit the stereotype that the film companies had constructed for them in the late 1960s and early 1970s. An openly gay person's job could be ruined in an instant. Jim Nabors, the adored Gomer Pyle, and Rock Hudson, the attractive celebrity everyone thought would make the ideal leading man, were at the heart of one of the most well-known scandals of that era, and a joke connected their names. Become unmanageable. Funny invites to a fictitious wedding were sent out by a bunch of gay buddies in Huntington Beach. According to the invitations, it was Rock Hudson and Jim Nabors' wedding reception. To parody the name of Nabors' character, they even dubbed it Hudson Rock Pyle. However, what began as a private joke quickly became widely known. The news quickly spread throughout the national press after gossip columns picked it up. A rumor like that could have ended a career back then. The two men avoided being spotted together because they were so terrified. To keep their employment, they put their friendship at risk. The narrative took another odd turn years later. According to a former Vogue model who wished to remain anonymous, she attended the alleged wedding. She stated that she was just 15 years old when she and a friend of Rock Hudson's attended what she believed to be a typical man and woman wedding. Rather, she claimed to have found herself in a Belgravian living room with candles. Male supermodels and designers filled the area. A priest married two men, and she watched in disbelief. As a naive 15-year-old at the time, she claimed, "I was astounded by the entire situation." I don't recall what Jim and Rock said to the priest. This story revived the old rumor, whether it was real or not. So, it demonstrated how difficult and private life was for gay celebrities in those days. Additionally, it increased public curiosity regarding the true nature of the incident. The rumor caused a great deal of harm. Jim Nabors was on the verge of landing a major new CBS show. He was already well known thanks to Gomer Pyle, ESMC, and The Andy Griffith Show. However, CBS withdrew when the marriage discussion became more heated. A star embroiled in a gay scandal was not someone the network wanted to jeopardize their reputation for. Nabors missed out on a significant job advancement. To make matters worse, he and Hudson ceased communicating. In the past, they had enjoyed enjoyable holidays together, but these days they avoided each other. Even a picture of the two guys together may be detrimental to their careers. Well, Hudson and his neighbors were forced to publicly refute the rumors. They said that the narrative was based solely on a jest invitation. However, the harm had already been done. Their handlers put a lot of effort into making them appear like straight stars, and they avoided one another. Health issues and anxiety were caused by that pressure. Sometimes the burden of being both a private outsider and a public hero was too much to bear. Nabors gradually moved away from the Hollywood action. In Hawaii, he achieved serenity during the late 1970s. It was just a judge and a couple of buddies. Fans who were unaware that Jim had been in a committed relationship for 38 years were astonished by their marriage. Later, Jim stated, "I'm not ashamed of people knowing that we've been together for 38 years.